Good afternoon, Wrestling Inc. Get up, get going. Welcome back to the Wrestling Inc. Daily. It's me, your managing editor of WrestlingInc.com, Nick Hausman, joined here as I am every Monday to get the week going right. He is our friend who is buried in snow right now. It's Michael Wiseman. Michael, welcome back to the Wrestling Inc. Daily.
It's been a journey to get here today, Nick. I will keep this short and sweet for the listeners because I know we have a ton to get to and some big stuff with Cody Rhodes and all that jazz today.
Sure.
But I want to just share a personal story. I warned you on Friday. I said, Nick, calling for a big snowstorm, 8 to 12 inches of snow, ice, yada, yada, yada. My power might be out. Right? It happened a couple of weeks ago. Wanted to give you the heads up so you can find a co-host if needed. Hey, we were great. No power loss. Everything's good until about 3:30 Eastern time, about an hour and a half ago. Our smoke alarms and our house our CO2 alarms are the same thing, go off across the entire house simultaneously at the exact same time. And I looked around, no fire. CO2 is a silent but deadly killer. So we grab the animals to go outside. By the way, it is impossible. They say, get your animals to go outside. Cats, hard to wrangle up to get outside in the middle of an emergency, just for the record. So
wow.
They come out. Yeah, man, it was a trip. Everything's fine though. No issues. It was a faulty alarm, calls from some blowing snow that leaked into the roof that happened to just fall directly on the fire smoke alarm. We're good though, and I made it to the cast today. So here I am.
All right. Well, Michael, we're glad you're safe and you're here, and hopefully the cat's good, right?
One is excuse me, one is traumatized.
Oh my God.
Sorry.
Wow. Okay. One is traumatized. Cat got your tongue. What's going on?
Cat got my tongue. The other one's great. She's resilient as hell, so we'll keep it going.
All right. Well, hopefully you are coming in bright-eyed, bushy-tailed today, not traumatized. We have a lot of news to get to here that we're going to start breaking down in just about a minute. After we talk the news of the day here, we have our latest interview. This is a very brief conversation I had with AJ Gray at the end of last week as he and Eddie Kingston have been going back and forth building to what was supposed to be a match at the World on GCW this Sunday. But if you read Wrestling today, you know that Eddie Kingston is dealing with an injury. Tony Khan announced that, I guess, at AEW Dark. He'll be out for a couple of weeks. PW Insider, they confirmed that. So because of that, I reached out to GCW. I said, is this match even going to happen? They said, no, this is not happening. But we have the audio anyway. I already had a post written up. We got the video here. So you're going to get to hear real briefly, AJ, his thoughts on why he called out Eddie Kingston and the World on GCW. But yeah, no, this match is it's definitely not happening, Michael.
So he's actually, I did not see the report until you just mentioned it just now, because he's been selling an injury for weeks. And right. I was under the impression that he was just selling being beat up from previous matches, because that AEW Dark from a week ago, he looked pretty bad too. So
no, it would appear Eddie Kingston actually injured, match at the World on GCW off. So we'll have more on that as it goes along, but we're going to have AJ here today. We're going to have a couple other GCW performers or wrestlers on the show here throughout the week as well, but we're going to start off here with AJ Gray. Of course, at the end of the show for everybody, we'll dive into the mailbag. We're going to look at who in WWE you would like to see Cody Rhodes feud with, which will bring us to our first story here. And before I dive into it, a reminder, if you want to be like Sherrod, John, Scott Housen, Antonio Garcia, Adam Yarborough, or Samantha, the chat room is open. You can leave a comment. I'll pull it up on the screen here as we go along. Everybody I just listed, shades of telling us hello. Good to see everybody there. All right. News you can use. News that'll leave a bruise. Let's get to it. The big news of the day broke this afternoon. Fightful saying Cody Rhodes is now a free agent, and apparently he has been since the end of 2021. He's been working without a contract. Of course, he is the current AEW TNT champion. Sammy Guevara, the interim TNT champion. And multiple sources, I guess, at AEW confirmed to Fightful he's not under any contract at all, which would seem to imply he is not under any kind of executive contract as an EVP at all either. Michael, what is your take on the Cody Rhodes is now a free agent storyline that has popped up to start the week?
The forbidden door is open and WWE is open for business, right? I mean, you mentioned the EVP contract, and I don't know if that original contract with Cody Rhodes and the Bucks was a performer and an EVP contract, or if they had merged those two, if they were two separate things. But it seems like Cody Rhodes has neither at the moment. And while he is still kind of, not kind of, he is still working for them. He is their TNT World Champion. It would seem to me that if you're trying to get somebody to come back to WWE right now, even if it's for a one-off appearance or a weekend appearance, it's not going to be Jon Moxley. It's not going to be Daniel Bryan. Cody Rhodes might be the one you could actually swing a deal with, and maybe something longer than that if the powers and at B or the rumors are true that Tony Khan has kind of reined in the EVP powers in recent months and years as well.
And see, the thing is, I saw this story, and if you're listening to the show, you probably listen pretty regularly. Our listenership is surprisingly consistent. But you know that I have been talking for a while about how of all the people at AEW to be originals that could possibly wind up back at AEW outside of Wardlow, who seems like a layup for them, Cody Rhodes is just like the perfect mold for somebody to go back to WWE. Now, let's talk about this for a little bit here. Samantha saying, wasn't AEW Cody's baby? Well, AEW was a couple people's baby. There were a couple daddies here, maybe a mommy, right? You had Cody, the Bucks, Omega working, and at the time there was Marty Scurll. You could throw Hangman Page into that, and Joey Ryan, of course. What a bunch that was being the Elite at the time. Tony Khan comes along. He's got a big bag of money, and these two things get paired together. Now, Cody was very influential in elevating the Elite to where they became to the point that they could have the ability to work on a negotiation or something like this, right? But where we started this story, when All Out or All In was going on into All Out with Tony Khan, is very different than when where we are at now. And you have to remember that when All Out or All In was going on, right? WWE was already actively trying to get all of these guys to sign anyway, because they didn't want to happen what was happening now, right? For a guy like Cody, his story is very different than Kenny and the Bucks, because Kenny and the Bucks are high-end indie talent that found their way to New Japan Pro Wrestling. We're getting over, and we're taken to the next level, arguably because of people like Cody, right? And what became the Ring of Honor machine in North America. Now, Cody had spent a long time on national television with WWE, had become burned out, and was looking for a way to raise his profile. And I genuinely believe that was always with the intent of coming back. Always. That's how you do this, Mike. That's how you do this thing,
He was told while he was there, basically, hey, everybody's got a role to play. Not everybody's going to be a main eventer, and that's okay, right? Everybody plays their part, and you're going to be Stardust, and you're going to be this kind of lower to mid-card act for a while. And it's not that he had never had a bigger run, right? Because that stuff he did with his brother a few years back, teaming up. Before that, the stuff with Legacy, he had those moments, but it felt like they kind of settled in and said, this is what we want you for, and this is it. If you look at everybody else who has come back and had a huge run with WWE since then, I want to call out Drew McIntyre, right? That dude
Drew is the blueprint for this. Yes,
yeah. Right. He goes out. He is in 3-man band. Right, bottom of the card, comes back. He goes all around the world, raises his stock. Vince McMahon sees it, brings him back in. Cody's doing that. He just did it in a slightly different way. Remember that original list he put out there broke the internet. Remember, the first thing he did was said, here's my list of opponents that I want to have. It was Kurt Angle, right? It was whoever, yada, yada, yada. And everybody's like, oh my God, this is something entirely different. People saw Cody Rhodes in a different light the first day he was at the door. To your point, he elevated that feud that he had with Kenny Omega that kind of came together at Supercard weekend a few years ago, right? That elevated the Bullet Club to a lot of North American fans who didn't know as much about that. It elevated guys like Kenny Omega and the Bucks who people had seen, right? But the casual WWE fan didn't know. So I think it makes sense. And we talk about what he's done in AEW. His style of booking and matches and storytelling have been very different than everything else on that card, right?
Yes. Go ahead.
And the Bucks are doing these high dynamic tag team matches. Kenny Omega bringing his New Japan mixed with indie, Ring of Honor, whatever worldwide style to the States. Cody Rhodes is out there doing a classic ass 80s, 90s WCW style. We're going to tell you a beautiful story, right? That match he had with his brother is still one of the hallmarks of his career in AEW. Right. It's an easy transition back. He looks like a big star, and he's doing all this stuff for Warner Brothers and everything else right now, too, outside the ring.
And the thing is, you mentioned how when Cody left, the comments he made about being told that, he wasn't going to be able to move up the card, that kind of sense of frustration. To be able to go back to the table and flex and say, if I'm coming back, You're going to pay me a lot more than you paid me last time. And I'm not going to be anything less than a main event player here.
Sure.
That is my spot when I come back here. I think that there's a certain, I mean, Vince likes that. Vince likes when you fight him, right?
Yep.
Now,
Yep.
how hard Cody took this fight to Vince, I mean, was it too? I mean, look, did they know that this guy was going to run out and start another company because he was so pissed off? I think he's maybe I think he's honest. You know what? I'm not going to say maybe. He's the only guy that's ever happened with where he was so pissed off, he left and created viable competition. Now, for him to be able to come back, get them to respect him on that level, right? He can always hang his hat on the fact that he was able to create a place where hopefully talent is able to work and create livelihoods for many, many years to come. I get it, man. That also, and this is and maybe I've convinced myself too much. I mean, look, this guy could very easily resign. There's a lot of reason for him to do that, but it's no secret about the infighting that has gone on with the EVPs and how much less clout all of them have gotten in the input of the AEW product, right? Where we were 3 years ago, everybody's sitting around in a room smoking cigars, drinking whiskey, and coming up with storylines is no longer where we're at right now, right? And so if you get removed from the creative room that you want to be in, and untruthfully, I don't know that Cody was removed as much as Kenny and the Bucks, but again, I'm not an actual fly on the wall. It's just things I've heard, right? But Cody was one of the last to leave the room, from what I gather, with Tony Khan, right? Mixed with Cody and his personality clash with AEW, right? And it's not just the fans; it's a backstage kind of clash too, where what that company wants to stand for and wave its flag about is not necessarily exactly always the vibe that Cody is giving off. And over in WWE world, I think they would know how to book and handle a Cody maybe a little bit more savvily. Is that a word? Savvily? More
do it.
They're going to book
more savvily. More, the most savviliest.
So, than AEW would. I think there's a lot of it. And again, do you want to sit around and be a part of this upstart thing, or do you want to go get the guaranteed money once again, double your exposure, double your clout, double your value, and go somewhere else? I mean, I see a heck of a lot of incentive for Cody to make this leap over to WWE right now. I know that a lot of people, I'd say about 98% of people, think I'm completely batshit insane. That's fine. But for a while, I've seen something like this coming. The guy is not under contract. He's not. There's a reason it's gotten to this point.
People have worked themselves up because they're like, no, Cody hates WWE. He'd never work there. Look, he smashed the throne. What? This is business, y'all, right? He went out there and he made a statement and he sold you all on a great story, and it worked out great for AEW, right? It's still a business. And on the other hand, we talk about Vince McMahon. Vince McMahon, yes, he holds grudges against guys he did not help create.
Correct.
And I think Vince very much would see Cody as one of the WWE guys. We gave him his run in the 2000s. We put him on that platform. Yeah, he went somewhere else and did something, but coming back, he's still our Cody Rhodes. I don't think that grudge works the same way. Instead, it's I went out and earned more money and raised more clout. Because again, to your point about Cody doing the things he's doing outside of AEW fans don't want a reality show about Cody Rhodes. AEW fans aren't going to watch the Go Big show, right? WWE fans, though, they love that stuff. The Miz is a main event star because of what he does outside the ring. If anything, he is an ambassador. And Cody Rhodes being on TV shows, right? He's been close with Stephen Amell. They love that. And I think they would welcome him back with open arms because of a lot of that.
And the thing about the grudges as well, let's not forget that of his own volition, CM Punk has said that WWE did have interest in bringing him back, right? And he chose to do the AEW. If WWE can bring back a CM Punk after a CM Punk goes out and basically smear, and I'm not saying smear like he said anything wrong, but go out there and really paint a very bad picture of your company and raise issues about the actual medical way you handle your performers, which is a really, really heavy allegation and, cost Dr. Aman, I believe, a lot of money and created a huge headache for them. If they could go back on CM Punk, I don't care how many thrones Cody hit with a sledgehammer. It's all a show. It's all a work. I absolutely think those people could do business again. And I think that this is what Cody's wanted. I think he has wanted Vince and co to really get on their knees and beg him to make a big move back to them. I think that's what he wants. And I think that's what he's getting right now.
You've seen it happen. And let's go back to Jeff Jarrett, right? Jeff Jarrett left the company a couple of times and rumored had, held hostage. I know he's addressed this on his podcast, held hostage the company for money and all that jazz. Came back many years later and worked as a backstage producer in a very important role, right? Kurt Angle left WWE, went and wrestled in TNA when they were trying to find a big star for years, buried WWE in a podcast or video or whatever it was back then, came back into WWE's open arms. There's countless examples. If the star is big enough, and the business model makes sense. Brock Lesnar left to go do UFC, right? They will make it happen. I think they would not do it for everybody, right? And I don't want to discount anybody. They might not see value in the Bucks the same way that they do Cody Rhodes.
No,
because they see Cody Rhodes as a star power and a main eventer because of his name even, right?
I think there's a lot of pros. And with Kyrolos here, he's got a super chat asking if we think he'll be in the Royal Rumble. You know what? I'm going to put a pin in this right now. We're going to talk more Cody in the mailbag. So we'll come back. We'll look at a potential jump. We'll talk about the Rumble a little bit. We'll come back to Cody. I also want to throw out there while we're talking about WWE and releases, Mustafa Ali has requested his release. He tweeted out the following yesterday. I have a message that is much bigger than my dreams in pro wrestling. Despite my best efforts, I will not be able to deliver this message while working with the WWE. Therefore, I am requesting my release from WWE. And Fightful throwing a little bit more color on this, saying that Ali asked for only one show off for paternity leave, despite not being featured on WWE programming since November of 2021. It led people within the company to believe that his paternity leave had been extended. However, a lot of other reasons reportedly led to this extended absence. Though he has been available to return since the first week of December, and there was a vignette filmed for Ali and his New America gimmick, Ali hasn't pitched anything new to portray. Now, the, quote, New America idea was apparently scrapped because the higher-ups in the company changed their minds about how successful it would be. Vince McMahon wanted, quote, something Mustafa Ali would never have done, unquote, instead of what was being pursued for him. This reportedly led to a, quote, heated argument between the two, unquote, and the WWE star hasn't been attending shows since. I have so many questions. First of all, what horribly offensive thing he wanted Ali to do as compared to what I would imagine is Ali trying to preach some kind of, bridge, reconciliation, maybe a strong, progressive, babyface character. I don't think anything would can piss Vince off more than you bringing him a pitch like that. All right, go ahead. I'm sorry, Michael. Yeah.
No, you're exactly right. It seems like Mustafa Ali has kind of been caught up in this storm of trying to do something a little bit more, I don't want to say edgy, right? But a little bit more in touch with the times with his character and persona. And that is not what WWE is known for, right? For all the things we talk about with Cody Rhodes and why he'd be a good fit, it kind of clashes with what we think about with progressivism. And you can even look at Gacy on NXT and what they've done with his character around, the snowflakes and all that stuff. So I think you talk about Ali here. He's been trying to do something different. He wants to break the mold. He said in the past, there's only like one thing that he would not do for a gimmick in WWE. He cycled through in recent memory the hacker gimmick. He's been the leader of Retribution, and he's put it his all to make those things work. But the one thing he would not do was essentially become, and this is very broad strokes here, but kind of play the terrorist bad guy role based on the color of his skin.
I managed Ali on the indies. He was very clear with me when I was working with him. That is not what we do. And I can guarantee if some kind of, Muslim stereotype was presented to him, I would bet he would go completely apeshit. I mean, this man's a former Chicago cop. Yep. This guy's dove through windows, literally holding semi-automatic shotguns before. Nothing scares Ali. Not the kind of a very, very nice man, but not the kind of person that I would want to insult with something like that. I'm sure we're going to find out more about this. I'm fascinated to hear from Ali exactly what transpired here, but he is somebody that I think it would benefit AEW. There's a lot of good pickups for AEW, but there are very few game changer pickups left. And I think, and especially, I don't know exactly what this New America thing is, but I think there's something there that could benefit AEW and show them more in line with the values that they've preached that I think some fans have maybe felt have not been delivered upon since the beginning days of AEW.
That's an interesting take, and Ali would definitely be the one to do that. Also, he's just a hell of a talent and a hell of a wrestler, and he will be up for. He's up for about anything, right? And you've
Right.
seen that time and time again. So it doesn't surprise me. I'm surprised it took this long, honestly. But I know he's going to land on his feet somewhere, and he's going to be hugely successful wherever else he goes.
Yeah, and Peter Avalon, by the way, today he announced he's taking indie bookings, seeming, to imply that his AEW contract has maybe not been renewed, and it's begun, Michael. It's open, right? Who's staying? Who's going? We've been waiting 3 years to see what was going to happen, and we're finally seeing it. We're going to get interviews with former AEW talent soon. We're going to all kinds of stuff's about to happen here. Michael.
I mean, that wasn't a great gimmick that they landed in AEW with, because he was on some of those early shows a lot, right? The Librarians thing didn't really kind of play out. But I think what we're going to see more of is AEW, Tony Khan. They're not going to cut talent who are on the roster under contract. They're just going to quietly let contracts expire and not renew them. And
Right.
I think, to your point, we're seeing the first of those trickle in. It's going to be interesting to see whose contracts actually get renewed moving forward.
It would make it easier for me if they just release graphics that's like, the Librarian is not elite, right? Like you get an elite one when you join, and then like you're not elite when you're released. It just make it easier for me to track, who's here, when and where.
You need
right?
like a better slogan though. They are a beyond elite, right?
Yeah.
Future elite.
We wish them all the luck in their future elite, right?
There you go. That's right. That works.
So last item here. Actually, we have everything today is kind of a mix of AEW, WWE stuff. So the Toronto Star had a story over the weekend looking at the competition between WWE and AEW. And WWE issued this statement as part of the piece that got a lot of attention. They said, if you look at the gory self-mutilation that bloodied several women in the December 31st event on TNT, it quickly becomes clear that these are very different businesses. We had an edgier product in the Attitude Era, and in a 2022 world, we don't believe that type of dangerous and brutal display is appealing to network partners, sponsors, venues, children, or the general public as a whole. Wow, what bluster from WWE here. Oh, clutch my pearls. Blood and violence. The thing a lot of people pointed to, of course, was Brock Lesnar taking that elbow to Randy Orton, nearly murdering him, right? Not too many years ago. The thing that sucks about WWE guys that want to bleed is they can't bleed. They have to throw themselves head first into shit. And I feel so bad for them, in that
it's
way.
a much worse way to have to execute against that, right? And talking about this controversial statement that they are against the gory self-mutilation that bloodied several women, the other big news coming out of today was WWE officially announced the Elimination Chamber Premium Live event for the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. And I just think it's hilarious. And I know it's business. I know it's kind of corporate warfare and firing shots. I think it's hilarious. On the same kind of time frame, this comment comes out. They are announcing a partnership. Again, the name Elimination Chamber, Saudi Arabia, maybe rethink that one a little bit. But also just being in Saudi Arabia again, and not with WWE, with the violence around that country and Jamal Khashoggi still in the back of our minds. It's not a great look, but it's all just posturing. So of course they don't care.
I just love, they just went straight Karen. They went from one to Karen, immediately, Oh my! Ooh, the blood and the violence. And look, I'm not sitting here telling everybody to go out there and blood. I'm not particularly a huge fan of people out there going to cut themselves, putting themselves in danger. I think there's a better way to do business. But this ain't it. WWE. This is not the hill to die on. I feel like is the blood and the money. So.
Brutal display is appealing to network partners, sponsors, venues, or here's what I will say. The flip side of this, Nick, is that pro wrestling for many, many, many years has struggled, especially in the early 2000s and mid 2000s, struggled to kind of shake off what it used to be and redefine itself as being a more corporate friendly kind of product, right? And WWE has worked very hard to establish big brand partnerships with Coke and Old Spice and yada, yada, yada. I think that's part of what's in this. But to your point about guys still having to get busted open the hard way, it does feel a little bit, or maybe a lot of it, disingenuous whenever they say things like this.
All right, lastly here, we got a Lita block we're going to get to real quick, then you'll hear AJ Gray. If you're in audio form, then we'll dive in the mailbag. We'll talk a little bit more about Cody. So Lita, Fightful saying AEW pitched a program to Lita that would have seen her work a top feud with AEW's Women World Champion Britt Baker, who became champion at Double or Nothing 2021. There were talks between the two sides and a creative plan laid out, which would have seen this feud happen around the time of All Out 2021 in September of last year. Now, Baker ended up retaining her title over Chris Statlander at All Out instead. The talks between Lita and AEW reportedly ended on a positive note, and there was a feeling that the two sides could eventually do business together, which is interesting because PW Insider saying as that WWE's decision to bring Lita to SmackDown was very last minute. The idea was approved on Thursday. They booked her travel the same day. SmackDown had Michael Cole with Lita in the ring. She talked about how she always wanted to win the Rumble, never has, and then Charlotte came out and they had a war of words. Man, Lita is I think people underestimate the power of Lita. She really gets a lot of attention. People know Lita, Amy Dumas, whatever you want to call her. People know her. She looks great. Her and Charlotte in the ring together was really cool to just see. I hope they do more together. But man, yeah, her jumping to AEW, that would have been a big get for them. Interesting to think about how that would have played out.
It seems like she is ready and rearing to kind of have one more final run here. And the idea that she could go to AEW and have that run is super enticing. It would elevate that women's division in a way that they've struggled. They continue to struggle to kind of, we got Britt Baker, DMD, she's great, but who else around her is going to rise up and raise this women's division up, much like the Four Horsewomen did for WWE's division back in the day, along with all the other talent around them. So Lita would have given some credibility to that. I'm curious why that didn't play out, because damn, that would have been perfect freaking timing with all of that in place. That being said, WWE last minute, let's get Lita in here. It sounds like the most WWE thing in the world, but I love it. Her and Charlotte, that feels like a big deal to me. And so I think part of it is, I'm sure part of it's money, but part of it is Lita spent a lot of time with WWE. And while other partnerships are enticing, you sometimes go back to the one because, hey, this is home, right? And maybe Lita has it in the back of her mind here.
All right, Michael. Well, thank you for joining me at the top of the show, talk all the news today. Thank you to everybody who jumped into the comment section here to chat along with us as we went along. And thank you to the truth, AJ Gray. Bummed that he and Eddie Kingston is not going to go down at the World on GCW this Sunday, but I'm sure there's going to be something else put into place that'll be just as good. Always enjoy having you here, AJ, and we will have him back in the future. All right, let's wrap it up here. We're going to dive into the mailbag at Wink Daily, WINC Daily. That's the account to follow if you want to vote in our daily polls. Today's poll question: who in WWE would you most like to see Cody Rhodes feud with? Is it Roman Reigns, Big E, Triple H, or somebody else? With over 300 votes, Triple H gets 56.2%, 30.2 to the big dog Roman Reigns, 7.1 to Big E, and then 6.5 to other people. Is Triple H? We'll start there. Is Triple H Rhodes? Does that intrigue you, Michael?
There's a history there. They feuded before, the back and forth across the brand lines, Triple H's comments. It makes for a great video package, which WWE loves. And I think they could put together a really fun match if Triple H were in ring shape. And I know he's had a heart condition. So it would be a great story. And those two names feel like the kind of marquee names WWE wants to put against each other.
I like Triple. I mean, it would have to be teams. I don't think Hunter's gonna be wrestling. He just had the heart surgery. So and you could build into all the NXT stuff. I like Roman Reigns. I think that there's just Cody stepping up and saying about how it's his time. And I've been watching you from afar, and I'm not so impressed. You get the Anawahi, Rhodes family back and forth. I didn't put him on the list, but after thinking about it, how great would Cody Rhodes and Randy Orton be right now? Oof. Those two would be fire if given the room to run.
And it goes back a whole decade to their run together in Legacy. You could do some stuff there. Bring back, DiBiase. Yeah.
DiBiase?
Ted
DiBiase Jr.?
DiBiase. Bring back DiBiase.
Did you have a stroke while saying DiBiase?
I flubbered through my words there. Here's what I would like to see, though. All jokes, it's been a day for me. My adrenaline's been up and down and all around. I would love to see I know it's not going to happen, but WWE pay some money to Danhausen and let's do a Stardust Danhausen feud. I don't care where it is. Do it on 205 Live. Just do it for me. Jesus, that would be so much fun.
I want Danhausen and Punk versus Sting and Darby Allin. He's teasing it, and I just think there's so much that could be done there. I love the idea of like Danhausen being like funny Darby Allin. I don't know why. The Bus Cat, by the way, over on Twitter, he said Vince McMahon, which I think you kind of just throw into the Triple H. I mean, it could be all the, Shane McMahon could probably work, nice little 3-4 months with Cody there if they wanted to,
He was crowned the greatest wrestler in the world at one point in WWE's history, so.
That's true. Best in the world.
Best in the world. That's right.
All right. Well, that's going to bring us to the end of the show here today, everybody. Thank you all so much for tuning in. If you like the show, go over to iTunes. Leave the Wrestling Inc. Daily a nice review, 5-star comment. That stuff keeps us alive on the chartable charts. If you've never tuned in live, 5 p.m. Eastern on all of Wrestling Inc.'s social platforms, YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, all those places. You can check the live recording. But, of course, we're on all the podcast platforms as well. SportWrestlingInc.com are all the socials. And tonight, after Raw, come back here to check out the Wrestling Inc. podcast, also available on all the podcast platforms. Michael, anything you want to put over here before we wrap up the show today?
They call me DeBossy. I am on Twitter. I am at The Real Wiseman.
Awesome. And I am at Nick_Hausman over on Twitter. Thank you so much for tuning in. I will talk to you tomorrow. And remember, if you winked, you didn't.